Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, we are good. Okay. So, hi, I'm Peter Fairfield, and I want to invite you to another edition of Healers Council. And today we are back with our third time with a person who I've become very, very interested in, Amrita Baba. And as I said on my very first video, I thought he was complete bullshit when I first started listening to him because he was claiming things that spiritual teachers don't usually claim to get people enlightened. What does that mean? And in the year and a half that I've been looking at him, and I've become friends with some of his students who've gotten enlightened, and I've been very interested and very impressed. And so we're back for a third time with Amrita Baba. And so welcome. Well, actually, he's welcoming me because we had trouble, so he had to invite me because my invitation to him didn't quite work. So anyway, I want to get into some details today. You had talked about sending blessings, and I want to look at the mechanics of that because this world needs blessings. And also, I want to talk very specifically about the boomies. There's 13 boomies. Maybe talk about what it's like at each of the levels or some of the levels and how we know it's happening. And I really want to get into some nuts and bolts because hopefully nuts and bolts are listening and they'll get better.
Okay, yes. Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be with you again. Yeah, thank you.
So, what I recently had some serious health challenges, and Baba sent me a blessing, which I felt. And so I wanted, I mean, there's the idea of just sending from my heart to your heart, just, from my mind to your heart, just sending you goodwill. But I think as you get more and more involved, more and more open, as you get clearer, as you have less restrictions, as your Buddha nature opens from your heart more and more, the idea of a blessing has a deeper and more profound possibility. I'd like you to talk about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's a really good topic. Well, it's exactly like you say that when there is less stuff in our system, we not only know ourselves better, in common terms, we feel better about ourselves. We feel it, easier to easier to be with ourselves, and we are easier to be with, right? But also, you know, there is a dynamic element to awareness. So, you know, awareness is clarity, just the clarity of it, like the clarity of diamond. But as we know, uh, awareness, it also has a dynamic element, which is energy, which is blessings, which is pure energy. So blessings are, how do you say, like waves of pure energy. And I think that, regardless of whatever type of meditation or spiritual tradition we might be following, blessings are essential in any type of practice, I feel. Whether if we are working, if we are just practicing simple meditation, let's say, following of the breath, some mindfulness, some shamatha meditation, or Zen meditation, something like that, kind of simple embodied sitting, we are getting in touch with our pure basic nature and its blessings. So, letting it loose, letting it come forward. And on the other hand, in practices where there are traditions, where there are prayers involved or mantras, mantras towards prayers toward God, prayers towards spiritual masters like Jesus or Buddha or Padmasambhava or Taoist masters, there's also an element of blessings, obviously. There's instantly, always when we ask, there is a charge, a spiritual charge, or a wave of blessings coming our way. So, and it's an interesting thing. I remember my heart teacher, one of them was this lady yogi, lady saint called Sivakami, and she was an adept in Hawaiian and Polynesian Huna tradition. And in Huna, I find it fascinating. There might be some other native cultures that have similar emphasis with blessings, but they had a really interesting and very down to earth and kind of, how do you say, like for them it seemed like their take on blessings was really that it's necessary to have in everyday life. And we kind of have remnants of that in this post-Christian culture. I'm Finnish by origin, and so I've grown in Orthodox Church, loosely, very loosely, But even in this post-Christian culture, we can see some remnants of that, like saying prayers for food, or when you're asking, you want to get married with somebody's daughter, you ask a blessing from their parents, something like this. So this,
Even just saying Gesundheit, it's a blessing if somebody sneezes or something, it's almost
yes,
automatic. It's built into the culture.
yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, it's become like just mere words.
Yeah.
But the reason why I wanted to mention Huna is because, well, I never really studied Huna in depth, but what I learned from my teacher, Sivakami, and what she had learned from hers, it was not only words, not only phrases to be repeated, God bless you, but that there was an actual energy to be felt and received. So, this is not difficult at all to do. It's not difficult at all to feel. So we are all capable of it. But, like with everything, if one doesn't have experience, that you just have to do some practice and do some experimentations and get the energy out from us. Of course, myself being a tantric practitioner and teacher, in tantric yoga, both in Hindu side and Buddhist side, to receive blessings of an enlightened master, Mahasiddha, is it's the most important part of the whole training system that has the power to take us to full enlightenment, to Buddhahood. So yeah, that's the nutshell explanation of what blessings are. But this is something I think that meditators should think about more, because we are always told that essentially we are no different from enlightened beings. And yet, people don't apply this simple understanding or this simple tool in their everyday lives of blessing their lives, blessing their activities, blessing their work, their home, their children, their spouses, their family, their whatever circumstances.
You know,
So,
I think one of the words that we might add here is lineage,
mhm.
because so much of this modern people that think they're a spiritual teacher because they did a weekend Tai Chi course or something, and there's a sense of lineage. I've been so fortunate to be connected to a number of lineages. My main teacher's lineage, Dapsang Rinpoche. I've been connected to actually a Maori lineage from the Nahata tribe, which was, I think, very similar to what you were talking about, the Huna. And once you feel connected to that lineage, it's like there's this energetic connection that frees you up, and it's like a friendship that opens you up to the energy of that person. And I felt that with you, even though I'm not officially a student, but I've being in your energy field, I felt it with you. And I've had tremendous healings from my teacher after he died. I was almost dying one time, and I prayed to him, and it was better. I had fever 105.6, and all of a sudden I didn't. The Nahata healings from a friend of mine who recently died, Raymond Ruka, one of my spiritual brothers. He was trained in the Maori tradition from the age of 5. And he was a profound being, and he connected me to his grannies. And again, you feel this energy, and I feel that with you. And that's one of the reasons that I pursued a conversation with you and an interest with you. And Actually, I've told quite a few people about you that are sneaking peeks at your website.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, thank you very much. But was there a question there somewhere?
Well, we had talked about a blessing, and then we moved into lineage, and
Right.
and and so
Oh,
I think lineage is a really important topic because people don't get that, well, they think, oh, you're bowing down to your guru, but you're actually bowing down to the whole lineage of wherever of all your guru's teachers. So it's not the person, it's the field, it's the energy, it's the sublime energy that carries through humans to other humans and other consciousnesses, I would think.
yeah, agree. And I think that Westerners in general have trauma with, well, loosely related to lineages and traditions, but also to, there's in this post-Christian culture, I've seen it with many people and I felt it myself, there is this trauma and very strong doubt
Yeah.
towards external spiritual authorities. Because I felt very strongly when studying with my teachers. I had, you know, two close heart teachers and then a large number of other teachers on top of my non-physical masters. But I always felt when I was studying with somebody, even if it was very briefly, I felt that they are authorities. And I didn't have a problem with that personally because I was in so much pain and confusion that I was desperate.
Yeah.
So I knew that, I need whatever they can share with me, whatever they can give me. So I didn't have a problem with lineage or, studying under somebody, right? But I think many people have that problem, but it's kind of an unstudied or subconscious trauma that Westerners have. And I've seen it many times that Westerners kind of rebel against this idea, even though, it might be completely obvious that whatever practices we are talking about or what lineage that it would be immensely beneficial for oneself. But there is this subconscious rebelling because of the religious cultural trauma we have. But it's just one thing, something that I've observed. But it is definitely like you say that becoming a student of some teacher who represents a lineage of an enlightened master or masters, it has the power to completely change one's life, completely change one's mind, completely change one's problems. So, you know, yeah, I can't really, I speak about when I teach. I always, my gurus sit in my heart, and I always feel that I can never repay them back what they have given me. And that's just the way how I feel after so many years of being part of lineages and so so many thousands of hours of receiving blessings from for example Padmasambhava or Babaji here behind me. I can never repay them, and I'm perfectly happy to be in that that position, yet trying to give back to others what they have given me.
Probably not at your level, but that's been my experience too. And what I've seen, because of the breakdown of the family, people's hearts are not nourished, and
Yes,
we're born into a world where our hearts are diminished, and because we don't have this initial bonding or full bonding with their mother and father, we begin to doubt bonding with everybody else. And it seems like the karmic predicament of this wave of souls, I know that's not a very Buddhist word, but it is of beings coming in, is to rediscover your heart again, and in rediscovering it, it makes it a stronger bond. It's not an assumed thing. We have to find it and discover it, and that's where the Buddha nature comes out. And as soon as that happens, then the whole realm of discovery of these lineages and these other realms that can love us and guide us and lead us, that's where that really can come. And so that's another thing that intrigued me about your work. You really speak about the path of the heart and Buddha nature and bodhicitta. And for me, you cannot even, progress in spirituality does not even begin really until the heart happens. And so it's one of the things I've appreciated about your work. So so that would be a question. How do you foster opening the heart? And then how does that lead into the opening of the bhumis? Maybe we could just cover briefly what a bhumi is, and then how how the path that you set out here, that you downloaded and refined, how does that lead to the bhumi opening, and what's that experience like for people?
Well, we spoke in the first episode about, I remember us talking a little bit about the specifics, how I teach and what the method, how the system is, how it
Yeah.
works, and that there are two different paths because we have two different sets of practices because each one of us has two different subtle bodies. So, there are, in ancient Indian literature, they spoke about three bodies, three deha, and which they adapted to Buddhism with three kaya, right? And these three bodies are physical, astral, and causal. I use the terms astral body and causal body because they are somewhat common terms, but they are very easy to define. So astral body again is in the shape of the physical body, and it's made of these grossest non-physical channels, which are meridian channels, just like in traditional Chinese medicine. Same channels, but the astral body is full of those channels. So in traditional Chinese medicine, at least in the extent that I've studied it through shiatsu, they use like a smaller number of channels. Although there are hundreds of acupuncture points, the number of channels is usually something like between 20 and 30. But the whole body space, kind of like, I don't have a beads, my mala here, but the whole body space is full of these meridian channels that are roughly the thickness of a mala, or like a shoelace perhaps, full of those channels. And then we have the causal body made of lighter, thinner channels that I call nadis, both inside the physical body, but also creating the aura around the body with the long vertical pillar going far down and far up. So there we have the two subtle bodies together with the physical body. And the reason why I wanted to say this, you asked about opening of the heart or healing of the heart and bhumis. The causal body, or the body that, in Buddhism, in Mahayana Buddhism, there is the presentation of 10 bhumis, dasha bhumi, or in Vajrayana Buddhism, there are presentations of different numbers, 13, 16, or 21. But whether we are talking about 13, 16, or 21, really the scope of the subtle body is still the same. It's simply that they have divided it in different ways. In Amrita Mandala we used 13 bhumis because it is directly related to the number of the main energy centers we all have, so main chakra centers. So on the bhumi side of things, on the causal body side of things, it's all about, in Buddhist terms, ignorance, turning ignorance to wisdom. So that's really all it is, and what it means in practical terms, it means that when we are confused who we are, we feel that something is off existentially. From that perspective, we don't really know our place in the world, we don't understand what's happening, and so on. We don't know who we are. That's when we need to, the way how Buddhist practice works, how our practice works, is that you look into this sense of me or I, this sense of self, because it's this accumulated or sense of self that we have created that gives us the feeling, this sense that something is off and we don't know who we are or where we are or where we are going, this existential confusion.
Who are we?
Sorry?
In 30, who are we?
Right. Yes. So to look into this self, this I, we find out that it's not really, there is no solid entity in us. There is no solid sense of self in us. But this sense of self, it gets from very apparent form to extremely subtle form. And that's why we have the whole arc of different bhumis. So it's not only about one awakening or two awakening experiences, how you can let loose or deconstruct that self, but we need a whole range of awakenings or bhumi openings to deal with that. But this process, purification of the causal body, going through the bhumis, does not necessarily have much effect on one's heart. And I know this from my own experience, and I've seen it with my students. And the reason for that is because, the heart problems, traumatization of the heart, closeness of the heart, frozenness of the heart are in the astral body. So, there can be little bit of kind of effect spilling from causal body practice to astral body and vice versa, and also to the physical body. But let's put it this way, because we have limited time for practice, we have limited time in these bodies, this is the sole reason why I feel that it's better to have two different paths, two different sets of practices, of course physical practices as well, so actually three different sets of practices to deal with each body separately, because that's the most efficient. And what you said about parents, I was just talking yesterday or the day before with one of my students, one of my friends, and we both come from broken families, very broken families. So we were both, like many, traumatized very early. And, she as well as myself, we have complex trauma, developmental trauma, and it's tricky and very demanding to heal. Very, very tricky to get your hands into, because traumas are kind of like in the subconscious of the subconscious mind. So somebody who meditates a lot over the years, for somebody like that, it is not that difficult to kind of access the subconscious mind. But traumatization is kind of in the subconscious of the subconscious. They are in the complete blind spot, and that's what makes it difficult to heal our traumas in whatever type of psychological trauma we're talking about, but also to heal the heart and open the heart. Nevertheless, nothing is impossible. It's a fascinating, a beautiful thing really, that to me it kind of seems, if I use this analogy, that whatever type of problem or illness we can develop in these human bodies, in this human form, God or our true nature has already given medicine and tools to heal it. This is really how I see it, that but we just need to, depending what we suffer of, we just need to find the right medicine and the right tools. And that is not always easy, as you probably know, because there are so many types of healing and so many lineages of yoga and dharma and meditation, and their views differ and their applications differ. So it's not always easy to find the right one. But if we talk about opening of the heart, so I don't think it is necessary to open the heart before starting causal body purification, or starting with the boomies. I don't think it's necessary at all. But at some point, of course, if somebody's heart is closed or frozen because of trauma, of course it needs to be healed. No doubt about it. Oh, what I was about to say about that discussion with my friend, who also comes like me from difficult family, like you said about, we don't really, very few of us unfortunately develop a really safe and trust-based and love-based relationship with our parents. But what we were discussing with my friend is that she felt like that in the absence of healthy parent relation, that role, through the blessings and through the many transmissions, have been at least partially healed through Guru Yoga. Because, meditating with enlightened masters, there is unshakable safety there. And
It creates that primal union that you can trust.
yes,
Rather than father and mother, you develop this unshakable union of love, respect, and connection without any dissonance.
exactly that. Yeah.
What I discovered in my work in Chinese medicine, you can feel the effect of the parents on the pulse. And what I discovered is, depending upon the bonding with the parent, it shifts. We have a polarity that runs up the spine and runs up the front. And depending upon the kind of bonding deficit with the parents, it shifts the whole front back yin and yang polarity in the body. And for me, that's how our karmic imprints into the physical body, is this creating this polarity. If we have a same-sex deficit, boy with his dad, girl with his mom, the energy moves forward, it becomes softer, more feminine, but less dynamic. If we have an opposite sex, it goes to the spine. And so in working with my clients, I find that by allowing that other aspect to become open, it begins to shift the availability of healing those fundamental relationships. And so for me, the heart is important with that. Now you have these two paths. And how would somebody that's becoming interested in your path, how should they decide which of those two to go to? I think they're both on your website. What are they called, and how would we decide which one we want to start with?
Well, of course, get a basic understanding what each of the paths, what they do, what is the purpose and goal of them, and then just try some of the practices. Get a little taste, and then just choose. But it's possible to do both at the same time. But in that case, one should have plenty of daily time for practice and plenty of time for rest. So, if somebody is busy at work or you have small kids at home, then it's out of the question to do both practices of both paths at the same time. So then you have to do one after the other.
Which practices focuses on the heart, and which practice focus on the boomies? What is it? How do you call them?
Well, the main practice of healing and opening the astral body, the meridian system, is Amrita Kriya Yoga. It's a form of Kriya Yoga. But together with Amrita Kriya Yoga, so that's a yogic practice. I mean, The term Kriya Yoga is very well known from Paramahamsa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, though Amrita Kriya Yoga is quite different from, well, I've learned 6 or 7 different lineages of Kriya Yoga, their full systems of Kriya, and Amrita Kriya Yoga is quite different from them. But together with Amrita Kriya, we have quite a large number of trauma healing practices, and many of them are the so-called trauma specials are available online in YouTube. So just to give you an like a brief explanation that it's a set of practices. It's not really like a so we have lots of practices like usually in tantric systems we have lots of practices for different purposes that people might need.
Okay. And what does it feel like to have a boomy open? And I'm sure that happens to people even without doing your practices.
Yes,
I had one open. It was kind of interesting. I had quite a result afterward. And I really attribute that just from being around you and also being around several of your students who have come to know that have gone through the boomies. And so what's that like? How do we know something's opening? And how do we accentuate more opening without grasping, without desiring?
well, when in Amrita Mandala we speak of bhumi openings or bhumi events, they are commonly known through the term awakening experience. So when somebody like Eckhart Tolle or Ramana Maharishi from southern India, they're very famous, and tens of millions of people have read Eckhart Tolle's Eckhart Tolle's awakening experience. So that's what we are talking about. Of course, awakening experience is known mainly in Buddhism. Most Buddhist traditions speak about awakening experiences. I started my practice in Zen Buddhism, where they use the term Kensho about awakening experience. Um, um, so we are talking about something that is universal. I've also met, during my years of teaching, I met a number of people who had awakened through, what do you call that? When you have something like a big hardship in your life, something like a divorce or illness, and suddenly something pops and things are a bit different. There is more wakefulness and less of fear, less anxiety, less any of that stuff.
Situation where you can either collapse or you can like break through.
Sorry, what's that?
A situation where you can either collapse or just break through in order to go forward.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what happened with Eckhart Tolle, isn't it? He was very extremely anxious, and then suddenly at night he woke up into this wondrous clarity. But so, what is awakening, and how does it feel like? Um, well, to be clear, awakening experiences are shifts that you can say that there's before and after. So it's, you know, something drops off, falls away, and consequentially you feel clearer, you feel wholer, you feel more complete, kind of, maybe I could say more integrated. You feel more yourself after this awakening experience. And when I say more yourself, it means that just a moment ago I said that we accumulate and we develop this belief into this how do you say that, like a separate independent me, separate from others, independent entity. this me entity. We develop that sense, and that sense is artificial. It's completely artificial. And when part of that disappears, pops, it means that you have an awakening experience. And when I say you become more of yourself, it means that you discover your true self. You know who and what you really are. And it is not identified into this small self, and it's also not identification with a great self or big self. So that's the trick. It is not three-dimensional small or three-dimensional big, but it's we are not talking about identifying with small space or large space, but it's actually non-dimensional. And also this true self, there is no sense of passing of time. So
So it's a little like,
non-dimensional and timeless.
sorry, it's a little like putting on a piece of clothing that actually fits for the first time. Putting
Yeah,
something that's too tight or that feels good. It feels more comfortable. Feels more like me, and there's less in the way, and yet I'm still right here.
yes,
That was kind of my experience a little bit.
yeah. And not only, it might sound so technical and kind of meaningless when I say non-dimensional and timeless, but all the truly positive qualities and positive energies, all the things that most people anyway, most healthy people value so much come forth. Kindness, being able to love, being able to remain calm even in stressful situations and periods, times in life. So it is not something, it's awakening experiences in plural. I feel something really basic, something really simple, really. And the reason why I said that awakening experiences in plural is because it's kind of an issue in the world of Dharma, yoga, non-duality today, that people only think in terms of having one or two awakening experiences. But like I said already a few minutes ago, there is so much depth to our causal bodies. So when somebody has like one awakening experience or two or even three, like as a practitioner or perhaps as a teacher of some tradition, this is only a little taste of what real, for the lack of a better term, the real expanse of natural clarity is. And this is the reason why we have so much technical details about the causal body purification, about the Bhumi process in Amrita Mandala. So it's not only about a couple of, when we speak of 13 Bhumis in Amrita Mandala, we speak of 6 small chakras here inside the head, on top of each other. So 6 between this distance, and then 7 in the space directly above the head, extending 5-6 meters, so 15-18 feet from the crown up. So and that's the full scope of the causal body.
I remember years ago, this is a little off track what we're talking about, but I was sitting at a beach in Oregon. This was like 50 years ago, and somebody had given me some psilocybin mushrooms, and we took the mushrooms, and all of a sudden, after a while, I felt like I had this antenna, and people would talk to me, and I would kind of wave the antenna, and they would understand what I was thinking, and so I don't think I held that, but that was my experience of having this kind of a wand on top of my head that really could communicate and receive. And when according to your student, Sylvia, my sixth blew me open, and I felt like I was less trapped in my body. I mean, I've always had psychic experiences and stuff, but I felt like that I was in space and in my body at the same time. There was, the window was open and without a shape to having to pass through. It was fascinating.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I find very interesting with you, and I think this could jiggle people's rational minds. You do a lot of channeling from non-corporeal, non-physical entities. You channel Babaji, Jesus, and several other beings, quite a few. And so, when that first started happening to you, how did you know that was real? And how and you know, a lot of us talk to I have an ex-wife that used to channel like that, and I would wake up at night and I'd feel this presence in the room, and then pretty soon I could talk to the presences. But how do people know this is real, and how can they bring that to themselves?
Yes. So what we are essentially talking about is what is known with the term Guru Yoga or Tantric Guru Yoga. And to be exact, it is not channeling. And it is definitely not channeling of some spirits or entities. Here I'm kind of getting a bit technical.
That's
I'm,
good.
I'm I'm sorry because I'm I'm like a mechanic or an engineer by my nature, not a poet or something like that. I think that if I was a poet, it would be more fascinating to people, but I think that exactly because there is so much kind of poetical, romantical, fantastical, and fascinating aspect in Dharma is why a lot of people don't understand the Dharma. So,
They fly away rather than getting centered in right to the exact point that they have to move through.
exactly. And that's the thing with any spiritual path, that we need technical details. There is no way around it. But, you know, so just before getting to your question, with awakenings or with Guru Yoga, with all this, we are really talking about getting in touch and revealing what is really beautiful and valuable, rich and juicy in us. So the opposite of tight, stressed, dry, uncomfortable, angry, all that. So we are really talking about, getting to the good stuff.
You just described politicians.
Huh?
You just described politicians.
Yeah, well, I think I described most of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so, yeah, to be clear, it's not channeling exactly, and it's not also being in contact with some random spirits or entities of some subtle realms. We are talking about Guru Yoga, which has a really clear definition and has had for tens of thousands of years at least. So, how did I first get in touch with that? Well, as I said, I grew up in a family that was broken. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother had to work a lot. And well, I grew up in a old mining town, and this is, uh, you know, when I was a small boy. This is early 1980s. So this is like the first generation after the Second World War in Finland, in Eastern Finland. So there was lots of alcoholism, lots of fighting, lots of stabbings in my hometown. And, as we can expect, war veterans who work in a mine, when they get off work, they get heavily drunk, right? So this was the environment where I grew up, and because I saw that confusion, that what's the English word, like that mess, that immense suffering. When I was a little kid of 3, 4 years old, I felt this anguish. It was overwhelming for me because I was just a little child. So I would go to my sister's and my room, sit on the bedside. We had a two-story bed, and I sat on my bed on the lower edge of the lower bed, and I would close my eyes, and I would feel this pain, and I just spontaneously started praying. And long story short, I would do some simple practices that I remembered from past lives, and always when I sat down at the edge of my bed, and later in my when I was a bigger child and then a teenager, there was this suddenly this appearing of immense light and clarity and love and radiance in the room, and I was always just swept away from it. It was so beautiful, and I don't think I ever tried to, I might have, I don't remember, but I don't think I ever tried to ask my mother, my father, or my uncle, or some adults, what that was. But it kept happening like 2 or 3 times a week for many, many years. Um, and then much later, I had already practiced Zen Buddhism for 4 years, and then when I switched to tantric practice, Kriya Yoga practice, Shaiva Tantra, I I remember when I read Yogananda's autobiography, it spoke about Babaji, and there's also one sentence there that says that something like. Simply, if you think of Babaji and invite him to you by saying his name, he will instantly come. Something like this is said there. And reading that sentence, I immediately invited Babaji, called him by name, and poosh, there was this immense blessings. Um, and then, I started Guru Yoga practice then, but it was maybe a few weeks after that, having that contact with him, when I realized that since I was a little boy, throughout my teenage years, it was Babaji, Padmasambhava, and many others that we now know as Mahasiddha family in Amrita Mandala, who came to me through those years just to kind of grab a hold of my shoulders and give me stability, so that
They saved you.
sorry.
They saved you from the mines and from the Finnish depression, and they really buoyed you to keep you from falling into the cultural milieu that where you grew up. It saved you.
Definitely, exactly so. So that's how it started. And then when I started practicing Tantra in 2006, it was in 2007 when I received my first instructions from them. And, this is by then I had spent 4 years, 4 or 5 years in retreat. So I was meditating 8 hours or more every day. When I switched from Zen Buddhism to tantric practice, I just overnight changed practices, but I kept my retreat schedule going. And during my Zen years, I also studied Zen arts, where analysis of the blessings or spiritual charge in the art piece, in calligraphy it's through black ink, is
Mhm.
a central topic of study. So, and I had studied, shiatsu, energy healing before that. And when I switched to Tantra after that introduction in Zen and arts, I already knew a thing or two about feeling energy, sensing energies, and differences in energies. Um, but I'm immensely grateful to my teacher Sivakami, because she had gone through the same phases and journey in her life and practice that I was going through. So she was extremely helpful, and I feel that the main thing that she taught me are two things. One is loving devotion, and the other is how you get in connection and communicate with non-physical masters. So, I spent 3.5 years with her until she passed away. And her guidance was really essential. But you asked about how people can do it. So it is something that if somebody has the karma to perhaps become a healer or become a teacher for others, it's the gurus who will talk to you. You don't go after, trying to get them to speak to you. It's a karmic thing. There's quite a bit of confusion of this, and I remember talking this with Sivakami because she had seen some of her friends kind of get in trouble with this because they kind of felt that they want to be a chosen one by the guru, and they more or less imagined that they were being given instructions, or they were talking with some non-physical masters with devastating results to themselves and also to if they gathered some followings. So this is exactly one point why in topics such as this there needs to be in-depth training, unless you have outstanding yogic samskaras, habit patterns, and excellent karmic connections. But if we think of Guru Yoga, how anybody could get in touch with non-physical masters and get their blessings, that immensely can help us. Just ask, just pray, just invite them, sit down, close your eyes, calm your breathing, feel your body, and then Babaji, or Jesus Christ, or Padmasambhava, or whoever you feel like, Krishna, whoever you feel like praying towards, just invite them with an open heart, with openness of heart. It doesn't mean that, if you have traumatized heart, you have some of that frozenness, just with sincerity, sincerely and honestly. Please bless me, please bless me, please bless me. And then sit and receive. Sit and feel. That's how.
But
What's that?
that's a lot.
No, it's very simple, very easy to do.
No, but I mean, it's so the simplicity is so powerful that
Yeah,
just as I dropped into the purity of, it's like I didn't feel ego. I didn't feel like it make me better. I just felt this sincere opening of your heart to these sources. And I think that the simplicity and the sincerity of our heart
yes,
to be purified. And, of course, there's a tradition of dedicating the merit to other beings. And, I would say old souls, first you get fucked up, then you get healed, and then you help other people. And so that's the process of letting our own pain, our own suffering. I grew up with crazy families as well. Maybe not as well, anyway, it doesn't matter that there's no test here, but so it's really, those are the blessings. It's the supreme difficulties of trying to find air and light and love that really brought me to the path. And I think that's what brings us to the path. And as long as we're in blame, as long as we're in anger and frustration, we don't get there. And I've been developing this new system of working with couples that only depends on who's awake. If people are freaking out or responding, whoever wakes up first, and they hold the space for the other person to finally wake up, then you can laugh about it. And and in a way, the spiritual path is like that. When we're in blame, we don't get there. When we're in curiosity, where do I put my feet? Where can I feel love? Where do I feel the light shining from? Then the universe will show us. I love the way you use God as a Buddhist, because it's just the infinity of all things that we are connected to, and there's no, there's no such thing as time, really. We don't have past lives. We have sequential lives that are here, and we can tune into really whatever consciousness that we choose. And I think that what I like about you so much is that you find these sublimely beautiful, nourishing sources to guide you. And then as I see you in your retreats, you sort of let that come forward and through you. And I think it's been profound what you've been able to do with people. And so where do you want to go from here with your teaching? Where do you feel like the path is leading you now?
Well, my task, my job, I was asked to do this, to put together a method for modern lay people that will take them to full enlightenment, also known as Buddhahood. So when I speak of Buddhahood, I mean it's commonly known as Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So this is what I signed up to do and was asked to do, and that's what I'm doing. This is I put the method together now, and as you know, we have, I don't know, 22 or 23 people who have completely purified the causal body, and then there's a bunch of us who are now working to purify the astral body, so that we get to that result. But what will be next? Well, just working day in, day out. And of course, it is like in every for every teacher in every mission, there are different periods how things change. One new thing comes, and then some old situation is left behind. So at the moment, I have been in pretty intensive retreat since May 2024, and I'm still continuing it, enjoying it quite a lot, although it's also very demanding, demanding internal work. But that's what I'm doing at the moment, together with leading retreats once a month or something like that. And we will see what comes after this. Hopefully at some point the practices that I'm doing will reap fruit, and then there will be no need for practice anymore. This is something that should be discussed more in the world, because it's not discussed enough. Even though in Vajrayana it's like the first thing you hear, Vajrayana or Tantric path is about attaining Buddhahood in single lifetime, in this life. But this is not discussed enough, and because of that, I think there is kind of mystification or some kind of doubt and fear if it's really possible. But I remember one of your gurus, Tulgu Urgyen, who I never met him, but I've been very impressed of his take, his expression of Dharma, that he said in one of his books that, listen up, folks. This is a real possibility. It's possible if you just do the work, and if you follow somebody who knows what you should do. And that he also said that he had known many men and women during his lifetime who had achieved that. And this is something that needs to be taken more seriously. And it's not about like it's actually interesting that we can find figures such as Padmasambhava or Shakyamuni Buddha or many of the ancient Dzogchen masters, or so many enlightened figures openly stating that, I have practiced, I have spent a lot of time in practice, I listened to the word and instructions of my guru, my teacher, and now I have attained it. I have I am embodying the result. This was said by so many. I've gathered many of them in my one of my books, Buddhas Among Us. So this was said by so many, but nowadays there is this, I feel, very strange and kind of oppressive traits in the world of Dharma, where if you say that, yes, I had an awakening experience and I can explain and describe how it is like, and then there are others who say that you said it, you cannot be awakened. There is this really strange culture of putting other down and not really understanding that, we are not following a religion here. We are yogis, practitioners. So we are always discussing and dealing with very practical things. And I think that it is because great masters have viewed yoga that way, very pragmatically, very practically, why for many of them it wasn't no problem at all to openly say what they have experienced or what they haven't experienced. And I think that this spirit of the Mahasiddhas needs to be brought back, because it doesn't make sense. It never made sense to me as you know, I went to schools in the West and I learned to uh, use my logic. I studied music technology when getting educated as a music producer, and so it's very, very commonsensical. And that's how I feel also Dharma should be, that enough of this hush hush, don't speak about the most important, don't speak about it's forbidden to speak of those things that cannot be mentioned, the Monty Python joke. And these things should be openly discussed. And I will continue to do so.
I spent 7 years living in a Tibetan town in Nepal altogether. And
Mm.
it was nobody would say they were enlightened. No teacher would say he was enlightened. It was really verboten. Actually, it was frowned upon to talk about. The greatest teacher would say, "I have nothing. I am nobody. I have no attainment at all." And so that was the culture that I really, embodied myself with Buddhism. And then when I first heard you speak, and that's why I was so doubtful. But yet we're Sangha, we're not average people. The part of the Sangha is that we should be able to share the truth of our experiences, not with ego,
Yes.
but with an understanding of, hey, this happened to me. Maybe it can happen to you, or do you have any insight what happened to me? That's real Sangha. And I found that missing, and it became a religion more than a pragmatic path of how do we do this? How do I get through this? What's next? Where do I put my feet? And so I
Yeah.
appreciate that about what what you're putting out.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, just to add a little bit to that. It's kind of strange because if we think of uh, somebody who has been trained as a doctor and has graduated as a doctor, it's not a problem for a doctor to say that, I have done the training and I have graduated as a doctor. It's simply a reality of the situation. And that's exactly how I view the Dharma, that we always need to understand that what awakenings are and what they do to the mind. But, one of the silly things that lots of Dharma believers do is that when somebody says, yes, I have had an awakening experience, they get stuck with you said the word I, and it's I is delusion, so you cannot be awakened. It's like oh my gosh, it's like going
It's a,
round and round.
a tattletale rather than an assist. I don't know if you know that word tattletale in school.
Right.
You told somebody blah blah, blah. But it's so far away from loving each other and wishing each other more opening, wishing each other more enlightenment, offering the blessings to each other. And I think that's what's been missing. So I appreciate that about your path.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
So
it's simply like a commonsensical, and like you said, openly sharing, openly describing these key experiences, it's immensely beneficial for others. And it also has been immensely beneficial for me to, learn, read all those quotes from the past masters and some people in the world who do that. It's just immensely beneficial because we are talking about existential matters here. And existentiality is something that touches all of us. So those who seek for those answers and solutions and awakening, of course, it is much, much better to have all this information and this sharing available in comparison of not having it at all. It's commonsensical.
It should be.
Yeah.
So we're kind of at the end here. So is there something you'd like to add or mention before we say goodbye to the next time?
Oh, well, what else? Oh, um, something that is an interesting thing. We were just having a Sangha discussion of this few days ago with few of my students, and we were discussing the view about trauma healing in the world and in Western psychology and its different modalities, and that it is not really in the map in people's minds the full healing of trauma. So there are lots of therapies, different healing practices, but in the Western world of Western psychology at least, there is no really discussion of full healing of trauma. There is usually even like top trauma psychotherapists, doctors, they only speak of healing it to some degree and then just learning to cope with it in one's daily life, right? But I think that full healing of trauma is something that kind of needs to be put on the map because it is possible.
That's really one of my main work right now is helping people with trauma. And if you think about trauma as just where the system gets overwhelmed, there's too much energy, either externally or conceptually. The body it can't deal with, so things just freeze and get stuck.
Yes.
And what I find is by creating some movement within that, but it has to connect to the self, and that's where the heart comes in. That's I work with the heart in almost everybody that comes, and if they can find their heart, and then we can create some movement in the physical, and it's physiological. It's in the brain, it's in the body, it's in our concept. If we can find the heart and then begin to move, then the person can stand in the heart while this other thing begins to move, and then there's an integration. That's what I find that works in my work, and I don't think the West really deals with the heart that way. They don't think about it. It's like it's alien, the physiology of actually the heart. I mean, there's been some work. There's a place called Heart Math, and there's been some of that, but it's not integral to the understanding, particularly in Western psychology at all, or particularly psychiatry. That it's mostly into drugs right now. It's difficult, very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, the way how I'm looking at this isn't with the eyes of a psychologist or a psychotherapist. I have no training in that field. So my experience comes from, well, first of all, having complex trauma, being traumatized, and then as a meditator, as a yogi. So, and then of course, having had the immense blessings and instructions from my gurus, helping me to figure out how to heal complex trauma. And also, what does it mean mainly for the astral body, what complex trauma does for the astral body. And this information or knowledge is not existing in established Asian traditions of Dharma. Understanding what complex trauma does in the subtle body and how you can fix it, how you can heal it. So this is something that has been really been the main topic of study the past few years, and then figuring out how to exactly get to full healing of trauma.
A lot of these problems were handled in the family. They weren't handled by an outside doctor even.
Mm,
Depression, anxiety, birth problems, things like that were handled in the family. It was considered a family issue. And so the literature on those things that are so prevalent in our culture is not so wide in a lot of the Tibetan medical, Chinese medical, Vedic medical, and so forth. It exists. But so now that it's coming out that we don't have a family that we can will hold us while we heal. So these things have become more of a medical problem rather than a social issue dealt with people that love you, because we don't often have people that love us in that
yeah,
way.
yeah. And here also it is problematic that when, well, a couple of things came to our mind. Uh, that first of all, in my experience, if you really want to heal one's traumas, you have to engage with internal practice in one form or the other.
Yeah.
So it's not like a taking a 10-minute meditation pill every day and that will take care of it. It's like healing of complex trauma. It's serious work and serious commitment. Um, but the other thing is that I've seen this with Western meditators and Western Dharma teachers that, they kind of, to varying degree, they have understanding of the awakening side of Dharma, but no really understanding of the traumatization that they themselves might have or their students might have. So that's why there's many angry meditators out there.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
stayed that way for a and the anger becomes their protection and their power. It keeps them safe from other people, and it's a way to, if they can get angry, then all of a sudden there's this energy rush that has nothing to do with meaning of life. And they can, I know, I work with a lot of people that have meditated a long time and gotten nowhere
yeah,
because nobody's pointed out that that anger is, if you feel it, if you just even let yourself feel the hurt underneath the anger, it
yeah,
begins to melt. So anyway, you've experienced all this.
yeah.
But let's continue this at another time. I've so enjoyed our talk today. I just find you a real gem and a real gift to me in my life. And as I get to know you, I appreciate you. And so thank you so much, Amrita Baba, for really opening up your heart and your deep self to the world today. I'm Peter Fairfield, and this is Physicians Council. And we will definitely be back with you. My dog Hannah is barking and saying goodbye as well. But thank you so much.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you, Peter.